Hi everyone and welcome to the video. I hope you're all well. I'm excited because today we're talking about one of my favourite things ever, and that is horror and thriller books. I can't wait. So before we start talking about my top 10 horror and thriller books ever, get yourself a blanket. We're gonna get cozy for this one. I have on my Read More Books jumper because that's very fitting for this video. Get yourself a drink, get cozy. We are gonna be chatting about all things creepy, scary, and crazy. So the first book that I want to talk about in this video is called, okay, this was actually one of my favorite books that I've read in ages, called The Burning Girls by CJ Tudor. And do you know what takes the cake? I bought this book, read it, absolutely loved it, and then I saw a signed copy in Waterstones for the same price the week after. I was fuming. But The Burning Girls by CJ Tudor, I actually read this as part of a buddy read and we all enjoyed it, but I think I was the one who ended up loving this one the most. This one actually has characters that come from Nottingham, so that felt like a little bit of home in this book. I think that's part of the reason that I liked it. Even though it wasn't set there, I just felt a connection to them for that reason. This one is about a mother and daughter who move to a little village in the middle of nowhere basically, and they encounter some very weird happenings going on in this village. This one reminded me of the film Hot Fuzz, if you've ever seen that. I remember certain scenes in this book really shocked me and the twist was perfect. I obviously don't want to give away too much about this book because I just want everyone to go out and read it immediately. If you like small village vibes, creepy citizens of the village, you'll love this one. It's great. The next one that I want to talk about is a horror, and this is an isolated horror. It's about a husband and wife who are staying in a cabin together and they're in the middle of nowhere practically. They have no neighbours, nothing, and they can hear something outside the cabin and it seems to be killing the animals. This book is Near the Bone by Christina Henry, and I just want to say before I start giving like my opinion on this book that this book is beautiful. The red painted pages are just absolutely gorgeous. This just brings me so much joy. I love it when there's just an extra touch on a book that just makes it so cute. Near the Bone is terrifying. It has a lot of layers, so you think it's about one thing but it's actually about another thing. And yeah, again, without spoiling it, I can't say too much, but it freaking terrified me. I mean, look at the monster on this book. You know that it's going to be scary before you've even picked it up. It was just fabulous. I've read this in a day. That happens only when I'm just completely enthralled by a book, and this did it for me. It was just great. It was absolutely perfect. Everything I wanted from an isolated horror. My third book that I'm going to talk about is I want to say a classic horror. It's, you know, one that a lot of people have heard of. In fact, I think everyone must have heard of this book in their lifetime, but this one is Misery by Stephen King. Misery is my favourite Stephen King book ever. I just find it utterly flawless, and I know that that's quite controversial. Not everyone agrees with this, but I've heard a lot of different opinions on Misery, but mine is that it's just great. There's definitely some self-indulgent writing in this book that can make it a little bit tedious in parts, but for me it wasn't tedious. I enjoyed every single chapter and yeah, it was perfect. This book is about a writer called Paul Sheldon who obviously it's an accident. He gets into a car accident and his number one fan is the one who finds him, and boy does she take care of him. I won't say any more, but if you know, you know. Also, this one, if you're not a big reader, I don't know why I'd be on this video if you're not a big reader, but if you enjoy film adaptations of books, the film adaptation of Misery is great. It has Kathy Bates and she does so well in it, and I rewatch it every so often because it's one of my absolute all-time favourites. The next book I'm going to talk about is actually a young adult thriller, and this book blew me away, and I don't say that lightly. It was so fun to read. I ingested the whole thing in a day. It didn't take me longer than a day to read. I just kept reading and reading, and I think it was about 3 in the morning when I finally put the book down, looked at my clock, realised what time it was, and thought, what the hell have I done with my day? This one is Dangerous Girls by Abigail Haas. Again, this one was quite big when it first came out. It's about a group of youngsters who go on spring break, I believe. And sorry, it's been a while since I read this one, but they went on spring break and one of them ends up getting murdered. This one follows the main girl called Anna, who is being basically accused of the murder of her best friend, and she's in jail in a country that she doesn't really know, and it's about her trying to find out who actually murdered her friend so that she can get out of prison. It was so good. Honestly, to be honest, I knew what the twist was going to be in this book about 3 chapters in, but it didn't take away from the enjoyment. It was just such a good journey. I just love being proved right. Like, you know, when you guess the twist and then you keep reading, and the more you read, you're like, yeah, that's another clue, that's another clue. This book was just such a fun ride, and I would recommend it to anyone who enjoys a really easy to read thriller. It's a good one. The next book is a lot darker. I'd say this was a thriller, but it definitely has some horror elements. I'm not really sure what they advertise this book as, but it's The Shadows by Alex North. Again, a book that I read in one single day. I just sat and just kept reading and reading and reading and couldn't stop. This book talks about, well, it jumps between times. So it's between the main character's childhood and present day when they're an adult. And when they were a child, they were part of a friendship group, and one of the friendship group murdered someone and hasn't been seen since. So he comes back to the town and things start happening that are slightly strange, and it was just honestly such a fun, scary, creepy read. It had some really creepy scenes. I'd definitely check the trigger warnings for this one. There is some really dark elements to it, which I love in a book personally, but I know it's not for everybody. It kind of delves into parallel universes and like dreams and sleep states and lucid dreaming. So if you're into that kind of idea, then you'll really enjoy this one. It's very interesting and it has some creative ideas that enticed me and captivated me a lot. Okay, so we're 5 books into the video now, and now's the time to grab yourself a cup of tea and grab yourself, you know, a nice cozy blanket if you haven't already, because we're going to roll into the next 5 books that I want to talk about in this video, all amazing books. The next one that I absolutely love and want to talk about to you guys is The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. Now I know guys, I know. The Silent Patient is probably his most loved book and I haven't read it yet.
Are you not embarrassed?
I know, I'm the worst book lover in the world, but The Maidens was stunning. So I'm so excited to jump into The Silent Patient ASAP. It was honestly one of my favourite books of last year. I loved every single second. This one follows a woman whose husband has unfortunately passed away recently, and so she is grieving. It definitely has themes of loss and love. Her daughter is at college and her friend has been murdered. It's kind of like a whodunit, like you don't know who committed the murder, and the book is about you finding out. But it's just the way, like that's pretty standard, but it's just the way that Alex Michaelides makes you convince yourself in your mind that every character is guilty. You don't trust anyone. Like honestly, I felt like I had it figured out. One chapter I'd be like, yep, it's that person's the murderer. And then I would literally turn the page and the next chapter I would think it was someone else. He had me guessing the entire time, and I don't think a book has ever done that before to me. Usually I either get it or I don't get it at all, but this one was like I had a million ideas running through my head, and the twist at the end still completely surprised me. I don't know how he did it, genuinely. I would recommend anyone who loves like a crime book. It's kind of deeper than a crime novel. It's like, I don't know. If you love like a whodunit, you will love this one. And if you love a thriller, you'll love this one. And if you love a horror, you'll love this one. It's for everybody. 100% get this book. It's just amazing. I love it so much. The next book I want to talk about might be another controversial one, but it's by Riley Sager, who is one of my all-time favourite authors. I read everything that he puts out. He has some of the best books that I've ever read in my life. Lock Every Door is a fantastic one. Home Before Dark, he has some great ones, but my favourite one actually came out last year, and I know what you're going to say already, but it was Survive the Night. Look at this cover, first of all. Isn't this just the most cool book cover ever? It just has some headlights and you just know that it's going to be great. You know what it's going to be about. So this one is about a girl who needs a ride home, and she lives far away from her college, so she needs someone who can drive her the whole way. And she's going through stuff because her best friend, again, this is a common theme in these books, her best friend has been murdered, and she's grieving and she's upset, and she, you know, does what all sane people would do in that situation and gets in a car with a complete stranger, even though there's a murderer on campus. And the person that she gets in the car with, she thinks could be the murderer. What do you do in that situation? Find out in this book, because it is a journey. This book was so fun. It's the type of book that I would love to see made into a movie, because it was just like a wild ride. There was a lot of twists and turns, and the end was just absolutely ridiculous. It was so wild, and I just think this would make a great movie. It's the type of film that I like to watch, where it's like isolated again, they're in a car together, so there's nowhere to really go, and you don't know if he's a murderer. Is he, isn't he? Yeah, I just love that kind of film. So I think if you like that kind of film also, you'll like this book. In fact, you'll love this book. Yeah, definitely give it a read and let me know what you think if you do. The next book is my most recently read horror book, and it was so fun. It literally made its way to the top of my favourite books list. Pretty much halfway through the book I knew this book is going to be up there with my faves, and that is The Book of Accidents by Chuck Wendig. Again, this book is so good. It's like a haunted house vibe, so if you did like Riley Sager's Home Before Dark, you'll probably really like this one. It does deal with a kind of, I don't want this, could that be a spoiler? I don't know, let me read the blurb. It's about a family who inherit their grandfather's, well, the dad's house, and of course it's a big creepy house with lots of horrible memories for Nate, who's the father, but they decide to move there, and this book follows each member of the family throughout their journey with the house. So at night, strange things start happening, and then they soon start happening in the day also. This one did not go where I expected it to at all. I thought it was going to be just a haunted house book, but it was actually so much more than that. I don't want to spoil it for anyone, because I think it's best to go into this book not knowing too much. I think the fact that it was 3 characters, so every other chapter you get a new character, that kind of kept me going and kept me wanting to read. So it was like Nate would have a chapter, and then his wife and child would have a chapter, and then I would want to know what happened next to him, so then I'd have to read his chapter again. I think this one kept me captivated. It is quite a long book. I think it's about 500 pages, so it's definitely no easy feat if you don't enjoy like a long-winded story, but I just thought it went so fast and it was definitely worth it. I would recommend this to anyone, even if you, as I say, aren't a huge fan of bigger books. The pacing is just on point. It's fantastic, such a good book. The next book is another young adult horror. I believe this one is marketed as a horror, but I could be wrong. It's called The Mary Shelley Club by Goldie Moldovsky. This one was great. I want a sequel to this book. It's kind of a light read. The things that happen in it aren't light, but I just found it quite an easy read. It wasn't too dark. This is about a group of teenagers who are in a club called the Mary Shelley Club, and in this club they give each other dares that they have to perform. Everyone will take turns, and the other members of the club will give them dares, and they have to do those dares. And of course, the dares get more dangerous and more dangerous until something doesn't seem quite right about it anymore. If that doesn't enthrall you, then I don't know what will. For a young adult, again, this one was just super good. I have no complaints. I don't usually read young adult because I prefer more dark and scary books. That sounds weird, but I prefer something that's actually going to scare me. But this one was just so fun, and I really loved the characters in this book. There wasn't a single one that I didn't like, even though they didn't all have the best intentions. I would highly recommend this one if you haven't read it already. I think this might be called something else in the UK. If it is, I'll pop it on the screen, but I have the American cover because I just liked it more. The last book in this whole video, I've been saving the best till last because this is my favourite book ever. And if you know me, you will already know what this book is. I talk about this book non-stop. It's The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. This book gives me everything. It gives me Desperate Housewives vibes. It gives me Twilight vampire scary vibes. It gives me From Dusk Till Dawn. It gives me just everything that I want in a book. It was so, so good. I recommend this to everyone, and actually a couple of my friends have read this since I've recommended it to them, which I'm so happy about, and they loved it as well. There's a certain scene in this book that made my heart jump out of my chest, and I still don't think it's jumped back in since. It was so, so good, just so well written. You know, the suspense when you're just like, what is going to happen? Like, I'm turning the page thinking, oh my God, like, I just need to know, like, I need to know what happens next. And this is one of those books. Probably not for everyone. It does have some really sad and triggering parts of it, but for me, it was just perfect. I just loved it so much. I will say though, the last chapter, did we need it? I don't know. I'm not sure about that one, but let's just pretend the last chapter doesn't exist. And yeah, everyone needs to read this book. Let's just love this book for the greatness that it is. It's my favourite. Future Georgia here. I just realised I never actually said what this book is about. It's about pretty self-explanatory, but it's basically about a book club full of Southern housewives who read a book every month. And one month a vampire turns up, hits the fan, and you're just in for the biggest, wildest roller coaster ride of your lives. Okay guys, thank you so, so much for watching if you did make it to the end. I'm not the best at articulating my thoughts, especially on books, which is why I never do reviews, but I just wanted to share with you some of my absolute favourites in hopes that maybe you'll find something that you want to read, or maybe you'll be able to recommend them to someone else. These books are all ones that I've enjoyed reading so much, so please let me know if you've read any of them, because I would love to chat to you about them. I love chatting books, so if you do want to leave any comments with your reviews, or even to give me some recommendations of books based on my favourite books. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed. Don't forget to like and subscribe and to see more future content. I do vlogs, travel vlogs. I love talking about books. This channel is basically just like a big mashup of everything that I enjoy. If you want to see more book content, that's definitely something that I can do in the future. Have a lovely day or evening depending on where you are, and I will see you in the next one. Bye guys!